Hello, everyone, and yeah, welcome to our webinar on transforming healthcare with AI-driven medical documentation. I'm Anir. I'm thrilled to be here with our esteemed panel of experts in the field of AI and healthcare. Before we get into the introductions, just want to thank you all for joining us today. Stormfree, we specialize in recruitment of senior and specialist hires in digital health and biotech. If you have any questions for the panel, please do drop them into the comments, and we'll take a look at these at the end. But yeah, without further ado, let's start with a brief introduction from each of our panelists. Please share a bit about yourselves and your work. Mahshid, I'll go to you first.
Sure. Hello, Mahshid Yassaei. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tali AI. I'm a computer scientist by training, but I have been building for healthcare in my first company as well for the past 11 years. We started Tali in 2020 because the problem of clinician burnout was already all over the place, and this was the problem everybody was complaining about. And the vision was to build an AI assistant for clinicians that would take care of all of their documentation and administrative tasks, so clinicians can focus on their patients and have face time with them. We co-designed the product with the largest clinic owner and one of the largest EHR companies here in Canada for over a year and a half before going live and generally available early 2023.
Awesome. Thanks, Mahshid. Ryan, over to you next. We'll go clockwise.
Yeah, hi everyone. Ryan Hagerbrant. I'm Senior Director of Product Strategy and Implementation at Inbound Health. Inbound Health is a digital health company that also provides clinical care. We work with health systems to stand up virtual hospital programs as well as virtual skilled nursing facility programs. We were spun out of Aligna Health about 2 years ago. I've been at Inbound Health for a year now and been part of a really exciting growth trajectory. My background is primarily in digital health with a brief stint at Google on the hardware side. I spent 4.5 years at Epic Systems, where I was responsible for leading teams to build out EMRs with large health systems. I work with children's hospitals as well, so I have a really good perspective on what it takes to do data integrations and actually build out workflows. And then I spent some time at Google working on hardware as well.
Great, yeah. And last but not least, Ian.
Hey everyone, my name's Ian. I'm the founder of this company, Augmedix. I started this endeavor about a decade ago. We were first to market to build what we now call ambient documentation for clinicians. Really, the mission is, help providers snap out of, the hours a day they spend typing on the computer and feeding the beast, place technology at the point of care, and allow clinicians to have natural conversations with the patient right in front of them, trusting that the technology in the background is tapping into those conversations and producing beautiful structured notes on behalf of clinicians, so that clinicians can focus on what matters most, the patient right in front of them. Prior to founding Augmedix, I worked a lot of years in healthcare, in various medical device companies such as Edwards Life Sciences and Intuitive Surgical. Really excited about the meeting today.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. So yeah, I guess just to kick things off, I wanted to, be quite broad and then come in a little bit more specifically. So I guess keeping it quite general in terms of AI and the impact that we've seen, of course, a lot of kind of huge, innovative things really across different industries and how generative AI is really impacting those. What I wanted to explore first is just what are the most effective use cases that we're seeing in healthcare. So Ryan, I'll come to you first. I appreciate you've got quite a lot of breadth in your background. I know Inbound's exploring quite a few several avenues with their technology. So yeah, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so a little bit about Inbound Health specifically in our workflows. So what we do is we work with health systems to build out virtual hospital programs. To do that, what we need to first, job to be done is to look into the hospital walls in the emergency departments to see which patients could be a good fit to get care at home. Then what we do is we have a virtual care platform that's integrated with the EMR to do televisits, monitor patients' biometrics from afar using biometric devices, and then we transition those patients back to primary care providers, keeping it all within the health systems network, ideally. So my role is I partner closely with our clinical team, our senior medical directors, to refine that workflow and look for automation opportunities, look for ways to introduce tools like AI. And the most compelling use cases that we've identified in our 2 years is on that patient identification piece, where there's a lot of data, a lot of patients, and our clinicians were spending a very large amount of time going through patients, looking at information. So we've invested in summarization, prioritization technology that does leverage AI to make those tasks be a lot quicker. The other element that we've looked into is further downstream, which is communication, actually, between our team and health system providers, as well as primary care providers. We noticed our team was spending a lot of time in putting together emails, messages, and so we've introduced AI to clean up those tasks and speed things up. So I think overall, from my point of view, where we've applied AI and the use cases that we've seen the most value in are in taking in all that information and summarizing, and then for communication, and not so much, at least at our stage, on at the point of clinical care. It's more of those other activities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that kind of use case of increasing productivity, efficiency, giving time back. I think we're seeing that across every industry, really. Mahshid, next. I know Tali was founded from some of the issues that you saw firsthand in the medical industry. Yeah, well, what impacts are you seeing using AI today?
Healthcare has historically been one of the slowest industries to adopt new technologies. AI is not an exception. But what we're seeing in the adoption of AI ascribed for documentation at the point of care, when the clinician and the patient meet, is actually very exceptional. For two reasons. One is that the problem is a significant issue for clinicians. It's not something that's not a nice to have. It's not something you would just obtain if you like. Like, honestly, the first time I heard about the problem, I thought it must be an exaggeration, like 15 to 20 hours per week on data entry into software by some of the most educated and intelligent people in the country. It was just, I thought, like, this cannot be true. So the problem is significant, and then the product is also very effective. Like, I know that, like, as Ian was saying, a lot of companies were trying to solve the problem for a long time through different solutions, different avenues. But the accuracies of AI algorithms has just hit the performance level that clinician would be happy with recently after the recent GPT models in 2022. So I think it's for that reason that we're seeing a lot of exceptional adoption of AI in healthcare, specifically for clinicians. But as Ryan was saying, there are so many other opportunities. So AI scribes right now at the point of care are saving about 20 hours, 25 hours per month of documentation time. Clinicians are spending 3 times, 4 times this time on documentation and admin overall for a lot of the tasks that Ryan was talking about before the patient walks in, and for tasks that after the patient leaves the room. So there is a lot of opportunities to go beyond the point solution and the specific use case we are working on, and cover more of those administrative tasks. Our focus from the lesson learned we've had from AI Scribe solution is we need to optimize for tasks that take a lot of clinicians' time and they hate doing it. For example, like meeting a patient in person and talking to them takes a lot of a clinician's time, but it's a kind of work they actually enjoy, and it's real value for the patient. But there are a lot of other things they do. They spend a lot of time on that's not really added value for themselves or the patient, and those are the tasks that we are focusing on.
Yeah, no, absolutely, it makes sense. And I guess with you, Ian, I wanted to, kind of come at it slightly differently. I know you've been at the forefront of this kind of technology for, a bit over a decade. I think, what have you seen change most in the last year or two in your space?
Yeah, so when we first started with ambient documentation many years ago, we set out to involve humans in the loop in the back end that made the ambient solution possible. That was the state of the art of technology at the time. And our strategy has always been to layer on more technology to improve human ratios and consistency. But what's been so wonderfully surprising over the last few years is that the AI models have improved so much that we've now been able to release products like Augmedix Go, where you can quite literally eliminate the Augmedix provisioned human in the loop. In other words, the human in the loop becomes the end user. So what does that mean? It means that maybe a decade ago, only your kind of wealthy and lucky doctors and specialists could afford an ambient documentation solution that had humans in the loop. Now, your every doctor, your every clinician can afford a pure AI solution such as Augmedix Go. And it means the health system can now scalably deploy enterprise-wide ambient documentation versus sort of sporadically here and there. That's a big deal. AI not only kind of lowers the cost, lowers the barrier, spurs wider adoption. There's other benefits as well we're seeing. It allows for a lot more consistency. When you zero out those humans in the loop in our operational system, AI output, i.e. note quality, is a lot more standard, and that standardization is your friend. And another thing we're seeing is faster turnaround times and other improvements, features we're able to offer made possible through these AI capabilities. For example, bidirectional capabilities, ability to nudge at the point of care to change behavior, and that's just the beginning.
Yeah, no, really, I think what you highlight really, so much potential for good. There's these new AI models. I think, they should be brought to the fingertips of doctors. I guess what kind of bred the idea for this, discussion was my feeling that maybe healthcare could fall behind. I guess pure software, they adopt these types of, capabilities a lot quicker. I know in healthcare, we've got our compliance and regulatory challenges. So I just wanted to talk about some of the unique challenges that we face in healthcare as opposed to maybe other industries. Ryan, again, coming to you first. I feel like you've run into many headaches when looking to implement any kind of new software. So can you just talk through some of those challenges and, regulatory compliances?
Yeah, certainly. I think it all starts with having a strong sponsor with the clinicians or the end user that you're targeting before you even face those compliance challenges, particularly in healthcare. If you have somebody who's constantly championing and speaking to the value with specific examples that the product can bring, whether it's a medical scribe or a virtual hospital, I think that's table stakes when it comes to implementing a solution, any technology solution within a health system or in the healthcare industry. From a compliance side, I can't speak to the nuances on the medical scribe side that Ian and Mahshid could probably, but from our point of view, in terms of implementing our patient identification as well as communication models, we have had to work hand in hand with our health system partners to explain to them what's in the model, what it's being trained on, how is their patient data going to be utilized in it. So we do partner with those organizations. In our experience, each health system has a different lens on the compliance and what they're looking for in a product. So one, tactical thing that we've done is had a lot of documentation on it, but also expect to have somebody like an implementation manager or somebody like me step in and explain it to the AI committees so that they have a better understanding, can ask as many questions as possible. I think overall, what I've seen in the healthcare industry in particular is they always want to know, and rightly so, what's under the hood. So I think getting to that detail quickly is pretty important.
And Ian, I guess, with AI having more of a spotlight and attention nowadays, are you seeing that more, scrutiny in your technology as well?
Yeah, as of now, most of the scrutiny, compliance, legal burden to us is really more less on the government side. We're seeing kind of the government is a little bit slow to react and kind of regulate AI in this domain. There are some regulations we have to think about. For example, here in the United States, the use of audio, video streaming and recording, is a regulated thing, and there's variance by state and what can be done, how storage happens, and how patient consent needs to happen. So that is something we spend a lot of time on. But most of the scrutiny comes from the health systems, i.e. our customers. that are, Brian mentioned, kind of spinning up these AI committees and responsible, AI committees left and right. I don't really view the scrutiny from these committees as kind of a task and an annoyance, but really an opportunity to shine and differentiate ourselves. And I would encourage others to view it that way as well. And I don't think there's a health system in the U.S. right now that isn't spinning up such review boards and reviewing all of the litany of innovative companies out there using these review boards. A lot of the things I see being asked are ensuring that health system data, the clinician and patient data is being protected, isn't unknowingly leaking into other models or foundational models, and the appropriate firewalls are maintained there and highly understood. Easier said than done, because in modern LLM operations, whatever you're using today is very likely to change in 3 months from now, and again in another 3 months. So to develop a sustainable system and understanding there, it requires effort and communication. Other things I see being reviewed are just ensuring that we're properly measuring output and modified F1 scores and such using a rational metrics, and also ensuring that we are doing reasonable efforts to alleviate bias and other unfortunate LLM hallucination and side effects that we need to be tracking and mitigating at all times. So I think it's something we should all wear with pride. That we're all helping these review boards kind of get to the other side of this.
Yeah. And Mahshid, do you have anything to add there? I guess as a relatively new player, Ian mentioned wanting to kind of differentiate in those kind of where you're navigating that. What would you say there?
I think some of the points that Ryan mentioned and Ian mentioned, they're very true. Like having a champion in an organization that would actually be the voice of the new tech, I think is super important. A lot of the new technologies, I'm saying, like I remember when we were starting, there were questions whether like a product-led growth similar to what Zoom and Dropbox have been leading in the tech space would work in a healthcare system. I think we believe that clinicians as being very strong, having very strong voices in their organizations, would actually be strong advocates in their organizations when they try a piece of technology and they like it and be heavily invested in that, and it's paying off. So I think the role of the champion is very important. The other thing I think is because the clinicians have not historically had good experience with technology, there's a little bit of a technology fatigue among clinicians. It is very, very important that any new piece of technology has a very lightweight and small footprint at the point of care. Clinicians are tired of having to log into like 20 different solutions, and then that kind of a product mindset and product view is super important. Security and privacy regulatory, as Ian was saying, is very important. One of the challenges in this space is specifically generative AI in healthcare is that I think everybody needs a little more clarity on regulations for this space. There's still a lot of unknown, and organizations are trying to do the best they can. But I think having more guidelines would help the buyers and also the solution providers on both sides. I see the role of associations and health authorities, government organizations here as well, doing a little bit of work on due diligence process. I think will help clinicians, because most organizations and clinicians, they're very busy to do the due diligence themselves. They would like to trust an organization that they already trust with some of that work.
Yeah.
And then wanted to plus one on that. One thing we did was, sorry, my internet was. One thing we did was, join the High Trust Association to really signal organizational commitment to security and compliance. And to Mahshid's point, there's a lot of associations forming now in and around AI and responsible AI. We'll be announcing some of those joining soon, and I think that's another suggested way that providers and vendors can kind of build trust with each other.
Yeah, and yeah, I think building trust is a big thing. I'm sure there's kind of piloting and demos of these types of products. I know, Ian, before we talked about a lot of different vendors having snazzy demos. But yeah, I think what will make the best products stand out in terms of long term and scaling it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to cook up snazzy demos using the tools available to even teenagers and kids these days. And many of those snazzy demos can be pretty impressive to venture capitalists and health system CIOs on first glance. But what we see time and again is where the pedal hits the metal is integration and plumbing. And those snazzy demos often fall apart when they don't have the right bidirectional integrations to systems of record. And that is oftentimes the harder part, making those investments and getting alignment with the health systems to make all of that come to life. Other impediments I see is, healthcare in the US, and I assume other places as well, tends to be very non-standard. There's a lot of just variability in workflows and preferences from one group and clinician to the next. And it takes, a lot of UI, UX, customer success, model tweaks to really absorb all of that variability. And it's one thing to create a demo; it's another thing to build a company that actually can deploy across a highly variable health system. So, both for providers considering adoption as well as vendors creating innovation. I see those as the two biggest challenges, or should I say opportunities, for those innovators that are able to kind of surmount those issues.
Yeah, and at that layer, I think it's really important to get that integration right. Really kind of being interoperable, seamless with the kind of stacks and the data that health systems have. I think Ryan, coming to you as the expert at this layer, what are the best practices for achieving that?
Yeah, I mean, before jumping in that, Ian's comments are making me think of when I've done these implementations before with large health systems, and we'd always say, if you've implemented with one health system, you've only implemented with one health system. Every single health system is very different based on the market, their workflows, the way they built their EMR. So the ability to have a product that is configurable and can meet the needs at specific workflow points, depending on the EMR and which specialty you're going to start with, is no easy feat. In terms of best practices, I do think having a development team in-house that is familiar with working with EMR data, working with clinical data is, again, table stakes, something to have. Otherwise, there are publicly available APIs that a lot of the larger EMRs do make available. If you told me, 3 or 4 years ago, if their best practice was to consider those public APIs, I don't know if I would have said that with conviction, but I do think over the past 3 to 4 years, the market has improved quite a bit in terms of making those APIs available and something that your development team can use to power workflows or models. I think the other best practice is very early on, sitting down with your counterparts at these health systems, again, using your sponsor as a clinical champion, as an individual who can talk to the IT teams and speak to the folks under the CEO about all the value this is going to bring to the organization. But sitting down with that IT team very quickly to understand, okay, I've implemented with an Epic before, or Cerner before at another health system, but what's different about that EMR setup? And I think if you find those individuals within the health system and you have that champion to really drive it through, you can very quickly understand what those nuances are going to be, bring it back to your development team and start to think about them in your design, your implementation of your solution. So I think there's some, ground level type work you can put into designing your team and your product around public APIs and having an in-house development team that can very flexibly build out integrations based on the health system's needs. And then as part of the implementation, I do think leveraging that IT team pretty early on to learn more about their setup and build up the EMR and other systems is something that you just got to do. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to hit the ground running as quickly as you want, and that go live date's going to slowly creep forward.
Yeah, and Mahshid, I think Ian touched on UI UX. I know before we talked about Tali, really kind of making that point of pride and having that friendly interface that's, kind of intuitive. Has that been your focus on that end in terms of that interoperability?
Yeah, I think as I said, we look at the problem similar to how Ryan and Ian was talking about this, and a seamless integration with the EMR is essential right now. It's not a nice to have, and on top of that, I think the whole promise of an ambient AI assistant solution is that it's actually ambient. It's not that it doesn't have a huge footprint at the point of care. It doesn't become another new burden for clinicians to learn and onboard and get trained on and everything. The point is that the most hated part of a clinician's job gets replaced with a single click. And if you go beyond that and ask them, hey, now you need to do a click on a drop down and say X, and then after that you need to do this and that, if you're really replacing a previous workflow to a new workflow. And it's I know from our experience with our clinicians that is not appreciated as much. So our focus is that we really measure the performance of the product in terms of the number of clicks the clinician needs to do to close a patient chart, how much time they spent before closing the patient chart. Really, we are really aiming for that. As I said, one click as the patient consent is taken at the beginning of the visit, and then Tali is enabled to closing the chart. And I think we can get there. It's just it needs real excellence in product design and implementation. It's not, as Ian was saying, like a school project of fitting a few stuff into together and deliver. The other thing is also the quality of the note and accuracy of the algorithm. So I know the LLMs have been amazing. The improvements in them has been amazing, but there are some real concerns around that. So for most clinicians, really, sometimes 95% is not enough. You always need to aim higher for higher accuracies, and that's another area of focus for us. We put that under usability of the product as well, because if a note is generated, then you need to make like 6 edits to the note repeatedly. As I said, you're really replacing a previous workflow with a new workflow. That doesn't move the needle for clinicians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in terms of that adoption, on a bigger scale, getting that education out to some of the decision makers that we talked about at the health systems, your customers. Are there any case studies that you can think of where that's really helped to better their understanding of how effective and safe this can be?
In terms of the safe, in terms of the, could you start the question with training? I want to clarify.
Yeah, no, just in terms of just moving forward, looking at down the road, how can we get this into the hands of more doctors? First, it's really kind of getting that education through to the decision makers. Have you had any cases where, yeah?
What we're seeing is that clinicians are really doing most of the training and marketing and everything by themselves. So like 30% of our growth is coming from word of mouth, because physicians hang out with each other. They go to conferences together. They meet each other in different clinics and hospitals, and they just talk about this. So if something is helping them, they talk about it. And we see that they help each other, onboard each other into the solution. They train each other on it. So I think when the solution is effective and you're actually solving a problem, clinicians are amazing friends and allies for the company. I think that is the biggest point of a scale for us. But aside from that, we have been very focused on, as I said, bringing the state of the art seamless onboarding and trainings processes that has been done in other industries, has been done in tech for a long time into healthcare. And we believe it is scalable in that sense. We offer a free 30 minutes onboarding and training to clinicians, and less than 10% of them actually take that offer, because most of them can actually just get started in 2-3 clicks and less than 5 minutes.
Cool. Yeah. Just a bit aware of the time, Mahshid. I'm aware you have to jump off. Is that right?
Yeah. I apologize. Yeah.
No worries. It's been great having you on. But yeah, thanks so much for coming. I'll get a copy of this to you, I guess, later on. But yeah, thanks so much.
Have a great day.
Bye. But yeah, coming back to you, Ryan and Ian, I guess, yeah, the last bit of this is really looking forward, future innovations in AI. Where do we think, the most significant impact can be on healthcare? How your company's preparing for this. So yeah, Ian, I want to come to you first.
Yeah, the pace of innovation is pretty relentless. If you ask me again in a year from now, I'm sure my answer will be very different. Ryan, you used the word table stakes a lot today, and I use that word a lot too. It seems like whatever we were like innovating on 6 months ago, we now use the word as table stakes. So there's like this constant sedimentation and layering that I see happening in the AI domain in healthcare. So for example, in my domain, ambient documentation, AI scribe, whatever you want to call it, 9 months ago, state of the art was performing ambient documentation with high quality and consistency with certain features and various specialties. That's quickly becoming table stakes. Like that is becoming standardized and expected. And now what I see newer models and companies stitching together are sort of beyond the note or note plus features around not just completing the note for clinicians based on clinician-patient conversation, but interjecting content and insight back into the point of care, causing behavior change and surfacing insights. Other capabilities such as ambient ordering and Q&A and lookup and certain types of CDI encoding and MDM guidance are now where the innovation is. And I'm sure in a year from now, much of what I just said will be compressed into those sort of and let's see. But I guess in my space, I would expect abilities more now and more insights versus sort of more really where we were 6 months ago, which is more passive documentation. That's I think where this space is going. And I should also say just the models themselves are just getting much more sophisticated, vanishingly few hallucinations, really high note quality scores and F1 scores that are increasingly not able just to handle simple visits with one or two problems stated, but long visits with many problems stated and rambling between one and the other with all sorts of personal chit chat. You'd be very pleasantly surprised with how newer, more sophisticated models are increasingly able to even produce high quality notes from those areas. So I very much look forward to innovation there as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I'm remembering a story that you told me, Ryan, of I guess your work together. I know you two have a history of collaborating. Maybe when you were at Google, I remember you said there was that kind of human element to someone watching the video and making the notes and then scribing that. I guess just looking at what we're seeing across some of the demos from OpenAI, these amazing multimodal capabilities, bringing together speech, vision, reasoning. Is there kind of, are those days behind us? Is that really kind of the future in the next year, do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to take this in the direction of at Inbound Health, we've had 9,000 care episodes in a person's home, like where we have nurses and virtual monitoring, documentation. So I see an opportunity to take some of that ambient documentation, ambient scribing technology and start to think about where the other areas, maybe not within the four walls of the hospital, that we can start to take that technology and start to tune it and apply it in different ways. I know we're very interested because we have, we're the ones sending nurses, having tablets, biometric monitoring devices, conversations with caregivers, all in the patient's home. So I think there's an opportunity as more healthcare is moving outside of the walls of the hospital to start to bring some of that technology in. And then further, the other opportunity I see, which I think I spoke about last time, is beyond the medical documentation and that provider to patient interaction. There's a lot of other workflows and automation opportunities and AI opportunities within healthcare. We spend a lot of time optimizing routes for our nursing team, delivering kits to patients, follow-up calls to patients is something we're doing quite a bit. There's just a lot of different opportunities, pockets where I think taking some of the off-the-shelf models or working with up-and-coming startups that are focusing on other specific problems in healthcare, I think those are the things that get me the most excited.
Yeah, for sure. I can see how that really is probably the next, viable next step, getting rid of those logistics, automating those things. Yeah, for sure. And then I guess, sorry, Ian, go ahead.
I like what you just said, Ryan. Like, I think we've kind of acclimated to the idea that like ambient AI is in this little box we call a phone. But like, I think in the next few quarters, we're going to see sort of ambient everywhere, like AI everywhere, ubiquitously. There'll be an expectation that phone call the clinician and a patient are having, the check-in, the chit chat with the nurse, the chit chat with the physician thereafter, it's all kind of stitched together in one connected ambient AI experience with like sort of a multimodal set of hardware and sensors to support that. It'll be really interesting to see those ecosystems form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess from our side, Storm3, specializing in talent, well, I think how your growth strategy is changing, what departments are looking most critical for you in the talent market to really kind of capitalize on those innovations that you're seeing.
How are our growth strategies changing? Well, I would say that 5 years ago, the typical buyer in the United States in the health system for a solution like ours was the CMIO. And what we're seeing now is that really a lot of the buying power for these solutions is now drifting to the CIO as well. So we're orienting to catering to that added buyer persona who's often chartered by the health system to evaluate and align these AI solutions and try to create ecosystems and platforms and avoid sort of point solution fatigue. And so I think mastering that CIO-driven sale is kind of essential in the sort of buying and growth patterns of the future. Another thing that I'm seeing is partner co-sell is increasingly a viable way to grow and sell in this new era. Young innovators have historically been able to kind of direct sell and pilot into health systems, but now I'm seeing quite frequently AI innovation kind of rides alongside like a cloud partner or an EHR partner or some channel partner or GPO partner is kind of a new and more typically common modality of sales, certainly one that we're investing in.
Ryan, I guess more so on the talent aspect, is there, things, kind of headcount that your teams are looking at in terms of the skill sets you see out there that you'd really like to bring in-house to, push those projects forward?
Yeah, certainly. So we're always in the market and hiring great clinical talent, since we also provide nursing care, provider care, community paramedic care. So that's a really important part of our growth strategy. Every time we're partnering with a new health system or going into a new market, that is really important. Not just finding people, but finding people that are providing that passionate, high quality care in the home. Beyond that, the clinical care aspect, we do have aggressive tech hiring goals as well. We do have our own machine learning developer on staff. I could see a world where we start to augment that team as we start to explore some of these other opportunities that I spoke through. I think the challenge we always run into in hiring great talent is making sure that they have a great understanding of working with healthcare data, EMR integrations, particularly for the size of inbound health. I think finding those individuals is sometimes like finding a unicorn, but the right person with healthcare talent, technical chops, and a real passion for transforming at-home care, I think we're always interested in hiring those individuals. I think definitely, I know I said this before, but leaning on the ability to understand the data that is at the health system and the limitations of it, but also the opportunities of it, I think is really important when I look to hire somebody on the technical team, because that's really important.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I think that's all kind of, from my agenda. We've got a couple questions here from the audience. So yeah, I guess just one each. Coming to you first, Ian. What are the FDA guidelines for AI-driven diagnosis? And can you share any points about how clients assess the AI risk?
Yeah, so I'm not the super expert in the FDA regulated part of the world. Historically, we've avoided that. We're kind of effectively the clinician's pencil. We will place a note of documentation in draft form in the EHR, without sort of, forcefully suggesting or changing any kind of care decision. And it's really up to the clinician or the physician to see the note that we produce and without exception, click the confirm button or the OK button, taking responsibility from that point forward. And under that workflow, there's no presently any kind of FDA guidance on that, which is fair, I would say. But what is interesting is, as we get more into these bidirectional capabilities and nudges, ultimately some of those nudges may be clinical oriented nudges. I think that's actually a good idea and a good place to go. The FDA does have sort of allowances and exceptions for that sort of clinical guidance. And so far as my research tells me, it's reasonable. It's not onerous. It's not a barrier. It's not like medical devices or drugs. So I'm actually pretty impressed with the broad leeway being given to the industry by the FDA as we get into that area, and ultimately we are tracking into that area, likely over the long run, though that's not currently in production with us.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Ryan, what would you say are the biggest barriers to innovation for AI in healthcare? Is it funding, security, regulation, or maybe none of those?
Yeah, great question. I don't think it's any of those, actually, and maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I'm talking to health systems regularly and been launching products with them. I'm almost sensing this like paralysis in the market. There's so many of these point solutions, so much out there, that I think that's what is the barrier right now. And the opportunity that we see, and probably other vendors in the market that are working with health systems, is making it bite-sized, making it something that everyone has pilot fatigue, but maybe don't call it a pilot, maybe call it a proof of concept, and getting to that proof of concept faster. Because I think even with a virtual hospital program, and you could probably say the same thing about medical scribing, until you've actually launched it within the health system's walls and shown the value and gotten your champion to actually point to results at your health system, it's hard to scale within a health system and then scale to other health systems. So I think it's the biggest barrier right now is getting to that yes, I would say. So that to me seems like the biggest barrier, versus not necessarily the funding, the security, regulation, at least from my lens.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you so much, guys, and to Mahshid as well. Couldn't quite make it to the end. Yeah, honestly, really, really fascinating discussion. An area with a lot of transformative potential, an area that I'll be, digging a lot deeper into in the coming months, probably boring some people's over a over dinner conversation. But yeah, if any of our audience has any questions, wants to learn more, please feel free to reach out. But yeah, that's it from us. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.